Okay. So I'm Daniela, and my background is not at all in spiritual publishing. It's more in political science, and I was a writer before I became a past life regression therapist. Um, and the world of spiritual publishing is very, very large. Um, what is spiritual publishing, really? Anything can be spiritual. So since this is a conversation and not a lecture and not a slideshow, I believe that each writer's journey is unique. So I can just tell a bit about my writing and publishing journey. And then if others want to share about theirs or their questions or where they're at or what they're interested in, then maybe I can be more of help than just do a general talk. So my first book that was published in 2010 was a political book. Nothing to do with spirituality. Not that I wasn't interested in spirituality, but I was busy and I had young children and a career and so on. But then something happened in my life that turned the picture 180 degrees. And suddenly I thought, the interest is not necessarily in politics and international relations and everything else I was doing until then. My brother passed away. My younger brother passed away very suddenly. And I started exploring all kind of things that I wasn't super interested in until now, like past life regression therapist. And after a couple of sessions with a past life regression therapist, I said, okay, maybe there's something there. I'll go and have a training as a past life regression therapist, not because I believed in it, but because I wanted to write about it and I wanted to explore. So that's how I got to the training with Andy at the time. Um, and I wrote a book about it that was called, sorry, I have my computer on my books to put it higher up. So on Dragonfly Wings, I don't know if you can see it, A Skeptic's Journey to Mediumship. Because I'm a skeptic and I don't believe anything unless it happens to me. I was really, really worried when I wrote this book that I'm going to lose all my friends because most of my friends at the time were from the UN, that I was working at one of the permanent missions to um, political scientists, and not people who I would consider spiritual. And the publishing journey of this book was very, very interesting because I've sent it out to a couple of publishers. Actually, a very big agent took it on and she liked it. Believe it or not, it was Barack Obama's agent. And she liked it. So she was trying to find it like a really big publisher. And she sent it to the big five. I think it was the big six or seven at the time. And she said, oh, they really all really like it, but it's really niche because past life regression and spirituality was a bit more niche 12 years ago than it is today. And then I sent it to a publisher called John Hunt in London. And John Hunt happened to just lose his mother shortly before he saw my manuscript. And I guess it resonated with him because this whole story that I wrote was about how I lost my brother, and then I went to train as a past life regression therapist, and then all these things happened, and all these things that I experienced as a client, and all the things that I experienced through clients that I was working with during the training. And he offered me a publishing contract. So that was my first realization that spiritual publishing, whether you call it that or not, is something that resonates with some people very deeply beyond just the story. Because we all read stories and read news and read novels and we read nonfiction books. And spirituality is often grouped or used to be grouped together with religion. But it's different from religion because religion is more preachy, perhaps, and more structured, while spirituality is a lot more versatile And spirituality is more authentic. Spiritual writing, if I may start with the first definition, is more authentic and comes from the author's personal experience, which why it's more unique and why it resonates with others on a very deep level. So after that book was published, I wrote another book of short stories, which also had something to do with life beyond this life, that also found a publisher quite quickly. And then I realized that actually putting spirituality into novels can reach a larger audience. So then I started the trilogy, which was called Recognitions, Premonitions, and Precognitions. And it's a story, but there's a story that has past life regression in it. And through all that time, all these people that I was worried that I'm going to lose, and I was worried that people will cross the street when they see me because they're going to think, oh, what happened to this woman? She suddenly lost it and she's gone into all these very strange things, such as past life regression and between life regression later and so on. A lot of people came without anybody seeing them and said, hey, Daniela, I've experienced something similar, but I've never told anyone. And the only reason that they dared talk about their experience is because they read about it in my book. And especially following on Dragonfly Wings, I got all sorts of emails from people all over the world which read it, and it helped them cope with the loss of a loved one. Very recently, sadly, a friend who I've never discussed spiritual issues with, isn't considered a very spiritual guy, not to himself and not to others, lost his 20-year-old son in an accident. And suddenly, it meant a lot to him to be able to explore the possibility that there's something beyond this life. So this is the value as writers or as people who are spiritual. Again, I don't like this word, who are more open, perhaps, to stories that are beyond this life. I think that through our writing, we can help others. And if it comes from, from within us, it's an authentic story. It reaches where it's meant to reach, and it will find a publisher. That said, it's not easy to publish a book, certainly not for a debut writer, for somebody who hasn't published before. So as somebody who's been working for a publisher for about 10 years, because that John Hunt, after he's published a couple of my books, he brought me on to his company to do some small jobs there, such as award submissions and manuscript reading and a little bit of PR, because his philosophy was that writers don't earn a lot just from writing. So if we can bring them into the company and make them invested in the future of the company, then they'll be more, positive and happier and sell more books and so on and so on. So John Hunt retired since 3 times he retired actually, but the last time he really retired and he sold the company. And it was bought by Watkins, which is a bigger publisher in the UK. So now I work for them, which is kind of cool because I got the promotion without doing anything. But I do feel that the fact that I help deliver an authentic voice that is needed helped me find a way to bring it out there. So a lot of things happen when you actually connect with a higher energy and you bring a really important information or energy or knowledge that is needed. You have a lot of helpers that help you publish. But I'll just take a little pause because before I start talking about all the forms of spiritual publishing, I don't know if anybody, Dennis or Lucy or Steffi, I don't know if you write at all, if you have any particular interests in writing or in publishing, just so I navigate it to something that will be actually useful to you.
I've been told I should write. I'm told I'm a good writer, but I don't have the I don't know what it takes to sit down and write. So I don't know if you could say something to that at some point. The actual mechanics, like where do you start when you write a book or yeah, what's your routine? How do you approach it? I know everyone's different, apparently, all writers are different, but like artists. Hmm.
How about you, Dennis? Do you write at all, or do you want to write, or have you written?
Um, Both and I would say I would like to write more. I haven't, but I kind of go in two directions. One is more. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've been training in the regression therapy during this year. So, I'm not yet graduated, but I I write a lot in terms of the session notes and that sort of thing for my clients. So it's a pretty realistic sort of direction. I have some thoughts about things that I would write if I were to sit and write short stories or that sort of thing. There's a character that I've had in my head for some years. I've never really gotten to the point of there being a story shaped around that I would want to sit and write out. Um, when I do, though, I check back and I used to write more journaling, and when I go back and reread those notes, that I like the uh, the verbiage that I use, um, and uh, I craft what I write. Even emails, I probably take way too much time in crafting an email to a person to, try to think about how is this going to sound and is this geared towards the person that I'm writing, shape the language and that sort of thing. So that's kind of where I am. I haven't really caught fire on a particular thing, but it's been a sort of a hovering interest, I guess. So that's why I wanted to listen to this and participate.
That's great. I mean, Steffi, I don't know if you want to say anything or anything of no. So, a writer is somebody who writes. Okay, we don't have to be published to be writers.
Mm.
So I think once we take this weight off our shoulders, that you have to prove something by writing, then it's easier to write because the best kind of writing is a writing you write for yourself, first of all. And I know there's a lot of writing teachers who say, oh, you get to know your audience and who is your audience and so on. All of that comes later. I think if we talk about spiritual writing, perhaps that makes it more unique because I believe personally, again, it's not a definition, that spiritual writing brings in something higher. So, in a way, it's a little bit like channeling. It's not very different than channeling because you connect to some knowledge or something that is authentic and you help bring it out in words. Now, singers can do it and painters can do it, Lucy, artists can do it. They bring something. I don't believe that my writing comes from me necessarily. I mean, obviously, it comes through me and it uses my words and I type or I write or whatnot. But I believe that if we're open to bringing in some important information that can be helpful to others or to ourselves, I mean, some people write journals or whatnot just for themselves or family members or whatnot, that's absolutely fine. But I believe that if we have the intention of bringing up a higher energy and helping others with our writing, that separates spiritual writing than, I don't know, thrillers or detective stories or love stories, which are all great. I mean, I like to read everything. I like to write everything. My last novel is a historical fiction for young adults. So, it doesn't have to be spiritual. But when you look at spiritual writing, which is what perhaps we're more interested in, it has to come from a higher self. And then where do you start? It's the same place that you start where you want to meditate or you want to bring some higher knowledge from a higher place. You have to be there because if the muse or the inspiration or the knowledge knocks and you're not there at your desk, it's going to move on. And it's really, really interesting because I think throughout, many hundreds of years, people have been writing about similar things in different parts of the world, very distant geographical locations at the same time. Because as humanity, as I see it, as humanity evolves, there's different kinds of knowledge that need to come through, and they're looking for channels to come through them. So it can be, again, it can be a love story that has a spiritual element for some people. It can be a psychological, perhaps, way or analysis that bringing spiritual knowledge. It can be poems. It can be nonfiction. It can be anything. What's important is that the source that it comes from is something greater than us, because then people really connect to it. So, Lucy, to your question, I think the main thing is to put, I don't know whether it's an hour a day or even 10 minutes a day in your schedule to sit down and be there. For me, it used to be 4 a.m. because I had young kids at the time, and that's the only time I had free. And I found that at 4 a.m, a lot of great stuff came out. I sometimes, at 8 o'clock in the morning, I didn't really understand what I wrote at 6 or at 4, but that's when it came. So I had to be there, and I had to be ready to capture it. Now, that is very separate from the actual technical aspect of writing. Because let's say you have a draft, okay? You have some notes, Dennis, or you have something, I don't know, Lucy, if you're looking into fiction or nonfiction, or Steffi, I don't know. I know you do write a lot of stuff, but it's more technical. Anything you look at, if you capture the essence of it, then you have the rest of the time to improve it and to edit it. So for me, the first step is always just capture what wants to come. Doesn't matter if it's notes, or some people record memos for themselves if it's easier. Or Lucy, I know you paint. If you paint something that then you want to write about, that is the first step. Then we can get into the more practical steps of writing and publishing and spiritual publishing. I think in the last 10 years, I've seen, since I think 12 years ago, it was my political book, but in the last decade, for sure, spiritual publishing evolved a lot. It's no longer niche. And it's no longer really grouped together with religion. And as we all know, so many things are happening in our world, and so much loss and so much grief, that anything that is uplifting, that is positive, that does come from a higher source to help people cope with everything that is happening in the world today, can be defined spiritual, because it comes from a spirit. Whatever you want to call that spirit, God, or whatever people believe in, they can call it in different names. But it's not from our imagination or plotting a detective story. It just has a very different energy to it. There are more publishers that accept spiritual publishing, even if they don't call it that. So, I just have a couple again. I'm going to move my, this is my Recognitions, which was my first spiritual novel, but there are others, such as you probably heard about or read, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. That was super successful. We have The Alchemist. We have, I have another book here that's called Awakening to the Spirit World, a shamanic journey. So there's a lot of options. We don't have to look for a spiritual publisher to publish spiritual writing. It can be in a journal of psychology, for example. They would publish something by a psychologist because you have the credentials. But coming from a more spiritual perspective than a clinical perspective could make the difference to a lot of people. So my first advice to anybody who wants to start writing and publishing is to start small. And I'm not saying a psychological journal is small, or a poem is small, or a short story is small. They're not small, but they're shorter chunks of reading for people who don't know who you are. And as we know, people's attention span is not what it used to be. So I do find that even with us, with the publisher, when we look at manuscripts, we no longer really look at manuscripts that are as big as Gone with the Wind or Anna Karenina or all these things who are fantastic back then. But today people just don't have the attention span. So it can be something as short as a letter to the editor in a small magazine, in a spiritual magazine or a psychological magazine. Anything that has your name on it, or as we call it in the business, a byline, anything that has your byline, or it can be a pen name if you don't want to be judged and you don't want to write under your real name. Because I don't know, Dennis, if that is an issue with the work you do. I know some doctors who, and psychiatrists, who were worried that if they write spiritual things, they will be looked down on by their colleagues. For example, there's this one chap called Aiden Alexander. Has anybody heard of him? Yeah. So he had a near-death experience. He's a psychiatrist, if I'm not mistaken. And he wrote a book about his experiences while he was brain dead. And he experienced a lot of stuff, and then he was sent back. He was super worried that when he writes that, he's going to be looked down on by serious colleagues who publish in scientific journals. And his book became, I don't even remember the name now, but I think it was like 7-8 years ago, it became a huge hit. And he was on TV shows about it. And the fact that it came from somebody who is actually a medical doctor, has an MD behind his name, helped him reach a wider audience. Just like for me, because I'm a former diplomat and I'm from a political science background, when I published on Dragonfly Wings, there were other kind of people that were interested to talk to me about it, because I wasn't like the spiritual type. That's why I called it a skeptic's journey to mediumship, because until today, I'm a skeptic. And that's the advice I always give people, only believe things if they happen to you. Don't believe what I tell you. So I think when we come to spiritual writing, another piece of advice is to tell it as it is, to tell it as you feel it. Eben Alexander is an American neurosurgeon, 2008. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's easy to say because I chickened out, it took me a while to kind of talk about this kind of spiritual writing that I was doing. But don't be afraid that people will judge you. If you come from a background that is more serious and less spiritual, because I think people will connect. If it comes from a real place, if it's something that really happens to you and talks about experience, people will connect to you. And publishers will be interested in your manuscript. I prepared a list that I can, Steffi, I can then maybe send to you. And if I didn't want to sort of, start with slides and going through names of publishers, but I think it's 15 UK and 15 American publishers that do accept spiritual manuscripts. But we don't have to stick to those ones, because anybody, if it's an authentic experience, if it's a real well-written manuscript, it doesn't have to be Hay House. It can be any publisher, really. So let's say we've written our poem or our short story or our nonfiction proposal. It's very, very important to have it well edited. So once we've written and rewritten and put something aside for at least a month, and we look at it again to see it with fresh eyes, there will still be things we haven't seen. So it's a really good idea to ask friends who like reading, who are honest, to look at what you've written and give you feedback. Now, it's also important to know how to accept feedback. And as a publisher, as a manuscript reader, one of the first things we look at is this writer going to be difficult to work with? So some writers or some people who submit manuscripts, you can see from the very beginning that it's going to be difficult. It's just the way they put out the proposal. So don't be that person. If you send something out, whether it's a short story to a magazine or to a journal or to a chapbook for poetry or whatnot, maybe it goes without saying, but be kind, be polite, be humble, and people look for new voices. I think any editor, any manuscript reader is very keen to discover a great new voice. It's not true that they only look for the published authors to publish more and more and more from them, because there's something about a debut novel or about a short story, about a new exciting voice in poetry that even that person who's written 20 books and published 15 cannot have. So the first step is always to kind of start somewhere, start small, maybe publish 2-3 things, 2-3 poems, 2-3 short stories. So when you actually write something longer, and longer can even be a novella. Some of the most successful so-called spiritual books, like The Alchemist, I don't remember how many pages it has, but it's a very, very short book. Or Jonathan Livingston Seagull, who remembers that? I remember it from my childhood. I was a teenager, I read it maybe 30 times. It's very short. So it doesn't have to be, a 300-page novel. It can be short. But in order to resonate with readers and to start with the manuscript reader and then with other readers, if it gets published, it has to come from a real place. That's why movies like, Star Wars and I don't know, like other journeys that have the dark force and the good and the evil, they resonate with so many people because it brings in something that is higher than ourselves. Without even knowing why we resonate with Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker and all these stories, it's because there's something very deep and very real, and it resonates. It's familiar to us without us knowing why. So then the manuscript reader says, "Oh, this is a great story, or this is a great poem." The energy, something about the energy of it is right. So it's not something tangible. I'm sorry to disappoint. I mean, I cannot give you a prescription of how to write something that will get published, other than say, really connect to something higher, be there for that something higher to choose you, because otherwise it can choose somebody else to express itself through. And then don't be worried about sending it out. And some writers, before they actually had something published, sometimes people have I remember we used to have a competition. I was part of the writers group in Geneva. I lived there for 12 years. We used to have a competition who got more rejection slips. And, you can get 50 rejections. They say Harry Potter had, 35 rejections before it was published. So what? And then some of these rejections, they will have an extra word from the editor or the reader saying, "Oh, we really like that. It's not right for us at this time, but we really liked it. So send us something else." And then next time you send something to that editor or to that reader, you already have the name of a person who liked what you're writing. Maybe it wasn't right just then, but it's a little door. It's a little open door that you can go through. Timing. Again, it's a very, very wide topic. So, I just want to make it as useful as I can to anybody who's here or anybody who will be watching this later. If somebody wants to aim for a certain publication, for example, there's women magazines who might accept spiritual writing. There is the Watkins magazine, who I think it's called Spirit and Destiny. That is something that I've written for a few years. I had a column about past life regression there. And they are very open to small snippets of spiritual writing. But the timeline that they accept things is very, very long. Say for Christmas, you should really submit in June. For Halloween, submit in February. For, I don't know, just take, if you want to write something that is not for a specific season, that's great. Dennis is a psychologist. You can probably write, some kind of aspect that is very unique and it can be published anytime. So that even makes it easier on one hand. On the other hand, a lot of magazines, a lot of publications are looking, they need Christmas story. They need the writers, they need the stories more than we need them. Now, it's true that every one of them gets a lot of submissions. It's true. But it's true that you can also submit to more than one publication. So back to technicalities now. I'm trying to keep it sort of within the professional sphere and not just the spiritual sphere. Every publication has guidelines. And one of the best ways to understand these guidelines is to go to their website, because today most of them have all of them have websites, and they'll tell you what they're looking for. And also is to buy a copy of that magazine, or if you're looking at the book publisher, to go to the bookstore and just look on the shelf and see what kind of things does this publisher publish. If it's a collection of short stories, maybe look at other things this editor liked and published. And it just makes it so much easier when you know what they're looking for, rather than sending random stuff to random people. And that's like, then you're ahead of the game. You're ahead over 90% of the people who send out stuff. Because I think 90% of the people don't actually do their homework when they send out stuff. They either they send it randomly, or they send, something for Christmas in November and it's too late. And they're not going to keep the thing for a year, because for Christmas a year later, they're going to have other submissions in June. So yeah, I mean, this is the best advice I can give technically. One more aspect of technical writing and publication is you do need to know who you're writing for. So although almost any story can be said, oh, it's for anybody, it's not for anybody. Because not everybody is interested in spiritual topics in that time of their life necessarily. It's easier if you try to focus a bit more. So Dennis, who do you write for? Have you ever thought of who would be your audience? Sorry to put you on the spot.
When I think of technical writing, I think of other people in my community. When I think of the other sort of short story kind of thoughts I have, I hadn't actually thought of an audience. I kind of perked up a little bit when you talked about going to the bookstore and looking at what kind of publishers publish in what directions, to get some sense of who might resonate with those kinds of things that I'd be thinking of.
Yeah, I mean that is, again, ahead of what 90% of people who send in submissions do, because all you have to ask yourself is, which shelf would my book be on? Would it be on this shelf or that shelf? Would it be under psychology? Would it be under religion and spirituality? Now they're separate in most bookstores. Would it be under romance? Would it be, and then you kind of know which shelf you're aiming for. And it's annoying because there's a lot of books, especially these days, that are cutting across genres. They're not, one genre, but in a bookstore or even Amazon or any other online website that uses keywords, you still need to know what your keywords are. And for you, if the keyword is general fiction, well, that's a huge net. Mm-hmm. But if you could say, oh, it's general fiction and psychology, and in my case, I don't know, history and 18th century France, for example, that narrows it down and makes it easier for people who are looking for this kind of stuff to find you. Because for now, they don't know who you are. They don't know who I am. It makes it easier to find. Lucy, what kind of writing do you write, or would you like to write?
Would like to write. I don't know really. It would be I guess kind of allegorical. I think it would be fiction, I think, but allegorical. But like something like Paul Coelho's style of writing, imparting some information in the form of story. I'm just, off the top of my head, because I haven't started. haven't really
Paulo
thought about
Coelho, I
it.
mean, he's hugely successful, hugely, hugely, hugely. And a lot of time as a manuscript reader, when we get a manuscript, and it's not just me, I mean, usually every manuscript gets seen by a few people, but I'm just one of them. One of the question is, who is it like? What are the competing titles? And then you put Paulo Coelho. Now, you're not going to really compete with Paulo Coelho. I'm not going to compete.
No.
But it's like that. It's like, in that
Yeah.
general general style. And it's not that there's a limit to how many people are interested in this. It doesn't mean that if I go and buy Paulo Coelho, I'm not going to buy your writing. On the contrary, I think it was oh gosh, what's her name? This hugely successful British author, Kate Moss, not the model, the author.
Ah, yes, with an E, Mosse.
Exactly. I know she has there's a model by that with that name as well. But interestingly, one of my very first short stories won a prize in the Chichester Observer Christmas Story competition like 15 years ago. And the judge of that competition was a chap called Greg Moss, who I knew nothing about. But it appears that he is or was a history teacher, and now he's also a successful writer. And he, I think, also writes historical fiction. And he happens to be married to Kate Moss. So then after I won, I think I won like £100. It was like the first £100 I got paid for my writing, and it was amazing. I didn't even want to cash the check. I was like, I wanted to frame it. But anyway, and then he gave a course, and my mother-in-law was living in the UK at the time. She's passed away now, but we visited her, and I went for a one-day workshop with Mr. Greg Moss. And everybody, woe and behold, Kate Moss showed up in this one-day workshop because it was a Saturday. So I guess she didn't want to stay home alone and look after the kids or something. And she told me something that stayed with me. And again, that was 15 years ago, that when she wrote her first super successful book, I have them all on the shelf, but I don't remember the name of it now. Does anybody remember what was one of her? I think she got like something from the Queen for uh, having been so successful with that book. Somebody else wrote at the same time another book in that style. So there was her book, and there was this other person's book. And she knew that person didn't copy from her. I mean, it just happened that these two books came out at the same time, and her book was super successful. That book was fairly successful. And she said, we're never in competition with other writers. If we connect to what we want to write, if we bring out what we really want to write, it's very possible that comes through Catherine Louise Moss. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. I didn't even know anything about her when I met her. Then when I was telling people, I made Kate Moss, they were like, oh, wow. But what she said made a lot of sense because she wasn't competing with this other writer. She wrote what she wanted to write. Her book was super successful. That book came out at the same time. And in a way, if you write something that somebody else writes and they both come out at the same time, you can help each other. I mean, you're not competing with them. That's the beautiful thing about writing. Nobody's going to write like you. Nobody has your voice. And another curious story is another British author who now I forget her name. I think she passed away actually. She said she was a hairdresser when she started writing. And she was a single mom and she didn't have a lot of time to write. And she said she would physically tie herself to her chair for an hour every day until she finished the book that she then ended up publishing, 4 or 5 very successful books. She physically tied herself to her chair. And that was the only way for her to finish the thing she was doing. So there's so many stories out there. I mean, everybody is unique. There's not one way, there's not one technique. Gosh, are we running out of time? No, we're not running out of time. I mean, there's so much I can cover here, but again, I want to make it useful. Maybe I'll just very quickly go through how to choose your publishing path. Let's say you tied yourself to the chair, you've written a poem or a short story or even a novel, you put it away, you didn't look at it for a month, you look at it again, you rewrite it, you ask a friend to read it, You get the feedback from a friend. You don't take it personally. You don't stop talking to the friend just because they said, or your family member. Family members are worse, actually. Don't ask for family member, because then, you don't have fallout with a family member over the fact they didn't like your poem. But, it can feel very personal when people give you, critiquing about your writing. But if you can move away from that and understand that actually, if that person gives you honest feedback, you don't have to take it. But you can. I mean, you can look at it through different eyes. If you're actually really interested in writing, there are a lot of small writing circles. I'm sure you can find one online or physically in your area or whatnot. Through this writing circle, you can actually have a feedback circle. And after you've done all that, and assuming you didn't, get upset with people in your writing circle and slam the door and left it, because some people can be when given feedback, some people can be quite harsh. Don't be that person. Be gentle when you give others feedback, but don't take it personally when you get feedback. Then you start searching for publishers. So I made myself a little list now, choosing your publishing path. There's traditional, hybrid, or self-publishing, which are maybe quite evident what each one is, but I'll mention like something about each one in a couple of sentences. Self-publishing is you say, I don't really mind if not a lot of people read my story. I want to publish my memoir for my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, and I'm going to write it, and I'm going to publish it in 100 copies. And I'm going to either hire an editor, which I highly recommend if you self-publish, because you don't see all the mistakes and the typos. And I design my cover myself, or I pay somebody to design my cover. And then I self-publish it through many, many companies that some are legit, some are less legit. So do your homework and you publish your book. And basically you pay all the costs and you get 100% of the profits. To be honest, most people who self-publish don't cover the costs of what they paid, which is fine. I mean, not everybody is publishing to become, the author of Harry Potter or to become Kate Moss. And that's absolutely fine. As long as you're aware that, the expectations to make a lot of money if you self-publish are usually not realistic. I think there's one exception that I know of. And I don't know if anybody heard about a book called 50 Shades of Grey. It's not spiritual at all. It's quite sexy. And I think the author started with publishing like one chapter online, and then somebody picked it up and it became a bestseller. And every woman I know has heard of it or read it or whatnot. So it can happen, but it probably won't. Then we're looking at hybrid publishers. And a hybrid publisher is somebody who, honestly, like the publisher I work for, like in a Kafka story, you have two doors. So you have one door through which the established authors come through, and these are traditional contracts. And you have another door, which is hybrid, which means that the publisher says, okay, I like your story. I don't think I'm going to cover my costs. You contribute to the costs, and we'll share the profits. And that I've seen work. Now, I don't like at all that other door, because as my job, one of my jobs that I do for the publisher is award submissions. A lot of awards won't take books that were published in a hybrid way, that the author contributed towards their costs, even if it looks the same, it was edited by the same editor, cover designed by the same designer. They don't like the fact that the author had to pay. Unfortunately, there are some authors who will never break through into publishing through a traditional contract, and that's the truth. So there's nothing wrong with saying, fine, my first novel is not going to cover costs, especially in fiction. That's kind of, it's really harsh because there's so much competition, and today people have access to so many books that if you wait for the right person who's going to, offer you $1 million for publishing contract, it'll never happen. So I've seen people go and say, okay, I'll go into a hybrid contract. I'll pay £1,000 or whatnot. And then I get, the publisher to publish it, to distribute it to the bookstores, online platforms, and I get my royalties. And eventually I cover my costs. Some cases it was very successful. And then, they got a lot of royalties. That's not my favorite, but, it is a way for people to get published. And there's the traditional contract, which you write, you send the manuscript, a publisher likes it, either gives you an advance or doesn't give you an advance. I mean, there used to be a lot more advances than there are today. An advance means, it doesn't mean they give you money to go and spend. It means, Lucy, I believe in your book. I believe I can sell 1,000 copies, which for us, for example, as a publisher, is the very minimum we take a book on. 1,000 is like the minimum. I'm going to pay you royalties for 500 copies in advance. Royalties are usually 10%. Who's good at math here? I'm not. So it's, let's say a book sells for 10 pounds. Your royalties are going to be about £1 per book. I'm going to give you, I believe I can sell 1,000. I'm going to give you £500 in advance. And then you're not going to see a cent until you earn back those 500, meaning until you sold 500 copies. Does that make sense? So that is an advance against royalties. So some publishers do that. A lot of publishers don't do that anymore. You do hear occasional stories about somebody who was offered $1 million for their memoir, maybe, I don't know, Prince Harry and what's her name, and Meghan. They may have gotten, a huge advance against royalties. I never did, which was fine, because you can earn your royalties. So even if you get 0 on the table from the publisher and they give you a traditional contract, and they say usually a traditional contract is 10% royalties. So if, let's say, a book sells for £10, you still get that £1, but you don't get it in advance. You get twice a year, £1 per book from what you sold. So this is a traditional contract. Today, authors are expected to help with promoting their writing. So if you publish something in a magazine, Dennis, the magazine editor will be eternally grateful if you tell your family and friends, hey, buy this magazine, my story is in it. Or you go buy 10 copies in the supermarket or whatever, wherever magazines are sold, and you give them the copies. So it's the same for me. For example, when I published, this is my last book that was published in July. It's a historical fiction for young adults. It's called The King of Montreal. I bought 100 copies up front. I get 50% off as an author, so I didn't pay the full price. And I did some events. And in the events, I sold the book, or my son rather went around and sold the book in the events. And I still made my royalties, but the publisher knew that I was supporting my book, that I was doing events, that I was buying copies, that I was selling copies to my friends and family and so on. Because the worst thing for a publisher or an editor or a magazine director or whatnot is when the author just sends the stuff. And when you ask, oh, what are you going to do to help promote your writing? You say, oh, that's not my problem. So I know it's not the same. It's a very different mode to be in, to write something and then to actually help promote it. But just so you know, and to be completely honest, writers today that can help promote their writing will find a publishing avenue much more easily than writers who don't. And that's the truth. Okay, well, there's a lot more. I mean, I'll send it to you, Steffi, and if anybody is interested now or later or whatnot, platform and community. I mean, it's great if you have a community of people that you can talk about your writing to. So Dennis, if you have psychologists who are interested in past life regression and interested in telling you how wrong you are and what nonsense it is, why not go and talk to them and create a platform that way? Or Lucy, if you are in a part of a spiritual association and you write poetry or whatnot, why don't you organize a reading and invite your friends from the spiritual association or do an online reading? And so all of that is called creating a platform or creating a community. And again, a publisher or somebody who wants to publish your writing will say, do you have a platform? And a platform doesn't necessarily mean a TikTok account with 2 million followers. It means somebody who you connect with, who is somehow close to you, interested in the same things. I don't know, maybe you do line dancing and you're going to invite all the line dancing people to meet you for a drink after and you talk about your book, whatnot, that you have some kind of community or platform to help spread the information about your book or your writing. Strong submissions that we get that I see, they include a clear proposal, polished writing, and some kind of hook. So I can think off the top of my head, it might be completely wrong. Lucy, your hook can be your art or your past life regression experience, or the book that chap wrote about you or that includes you, that can be a hook, that can be a hook to a story. Dennis, your psychology experience can be a very strong hook. And they won't necessarily, what I do, for example, is next month I have an event together with a sci-fi author. Now, I don't write sci-fi, but we're friends and we have a lot of common circles, and we're going to bring all these people together and we're going to have a symposium where we're going to talk about stuff about time, basically how time in literature, because mine is historical fiction and his is sci-fi, where the character goes back through AI in time, whatnot. So be creative, find stuff, find a hook, and that'll help you find an avenue for your publishing. Final thoughts. Yes, there is no single way to publish anything, and certainly not spiritual writing. Don't limit yourself to spiritual publishers. There's no rules about what spiritual writing is. A novel about past life regression can be as spiritual as The Alchemist, can be as spiritual as what's his name? David, I forget now. Anyway, a very successful sci-fi author who is not spiritual at all, but managed to basically cross the fence and sell a lot of books to people who like sci-fi, who like novels, and who like spirituality. And follow your intuition, follow what comes to you. Be resilient, because if you're going to give up after the first rejection or after the first 10 rejections, then that's not for you. Then you might as well, just write something for yourself, for the drawer, for your friends, for your family. Publishing is not tough. It's not, I think, I was very lucky maybe that my manuscript made it into the hands of John Hunt, who just lost his mother and he was interested in past life regression, and then joined me to do some work for his company beyond publishing my writing. But I don't think it's luck. I think when you bring something from the universe to help others, and something that's authentic, that's a real voice, then the universe helps you to find readers and to find the right place to put your work. And that's it, really. I don't know if you have any other questions. Feel free to contact me. Again, I cannot sort of provide individual appraisal of manuscripts or anything like that. I just don't have time to do that. But find a writers group or find friends who you like and trust to give you an opinion. And do reach out if there's anything specific that I can help with, or oh, we just got a dog that came in. Yeah, just reach out to me.
How can we contact you?
Steffi has my details. I can give you my email now, or I can actually put it in the chat if you want.
Okay.
I don't want to put it on the website, Steffi.
Mhm.
Where is my chat? There's my chat.
I was about to ask if you would want it put with the recording on YouTube.
No.
Bear in mind, it is only for those with the link. So it's really only for
Sorry, you
Santier
mean if I
members.
type it in the chat now, will it go on the recording?
No.
There we go.
But I can put it there if you want me to.
No. I think if somebody really wants to contact me and couldn't come today, they can ask, and you can give them my email. But
They can come via the Regression Association.
Yes, because it's very close to my heart, and I'm very happy to help people from the Regression Association, especially.
It to you.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if it's spiritual writing, especially if it's something that I believe in and I can help find a market for, or help with advice. I'll be happy to do so. And I'm going in deeper and taking a bigger and bigger role in the in this company that I'm working for because I think they're a fantastic publisher. So who knows? I mean, maybe some people from the Regression Association, if they send manuscripts, they don't send it to me directly. We have a whole system where they submit it online, and then readers get assigned the manuscript and they read it and they give opinions on it. But I may be one of those readers. But I'm happy to have any questions directly, but no promises. I mean, I can't, obviously I can't promise to anybody, oh, if you send me the manuscript because you're from the Regression Association, it's going to be looked at differently. It still has to be a good manuscript, well edited, with thoughts about who it is for, with some comparison, who it is like, who is your community that you're going to share it with. And that's all I can think about.
I have a question. It's just a thought. If one wanted to submit to a magazine, is there and you don't know what magazines are out there. Is there a publication or something where like it lists all the?
Well, there is a very, again, that I'm going back 15 years ago. So I'm just going to close the door because my dogs are running around and
We can't hear them or see them.
there we go. No, they're excited because my son came in from university, so they're running around the house, super excited. They can jump on him. There is a book that's called The Artist's Yearbook, Writers and Artists Yearbook, which 15 years ago, it used to be this thick, and they published a new one every year because they updated it. I think that's probably obsolete. There's probably a way to go through an online copy, or just buy the latest copy, but don't buy one every year because the changes are not that major that you should invest 30 pounds every year to buy a new copy. Another way that I used to use as a shortcut is I used to go to either a bookstore or a newsstand or an airport store where they have lots of magazines and buy a copy of each of the magazines I was interested in. And some magazines I didn't even know existed. So they have anything from psychology to design and to a lot of options. And you can buy copies of these magazines, take them home, read them, see the name of the editor, see the kind of stuff they publish, and then write to them, dear Mr. whatever the name or Miss, the editor's name is. I read in your last magazine this article that I found a lot of interest in. I want to propose something similar or something different, but in the same style. You can see how many words, more or less, is each article. So there's no point in sending to a magazine that only publishes 500-word articles. If you're going to send them a 4,000-word article, they're just not going to look at it because it's not their style. So either by looking through a publication, Googling, asking, ChatGPT, whatnot, or what I like to do is just buy copies of the magazine and read them. You can get a lot of ideas of where your work would fit. Again, I'm not recommending it because I work for Watkins, but they have Spirit and Destiny, which is very open to the kind of things we write. They have Spirituality and Health in the UK, which also I had a subscription a few years ago, but now I stopped it because I know already what they're looking for and what they're doing and so on. Basically, a magazine that you'd be interested in reading is probably a magazine where you should be submitting your work because that's the style that speaks to you. Because when you try to, adapt yourself to a style of a magazine that doesn't speak to you, it'll be evident. I mean, it won't feel right. It won't feel authentic.
Yeah. Fair comment. Yeah, very helpful.
Great. Well, thank you very much for being a great audience for the talk, and I hope it's useful for anybody who sees it, not live. And my only advice is sit down and write. There's no secret to do it. Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Just do it and do it from a true place within yourself. Don't try to write like somebody else or do stuff like somebody else, or because you're unique and your story is unique. And there are others, many others probably, who can resonate with your story and your voice.
Mm. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Daniela. It was as inspiring and interesting as the first time I heard it at the SRTA convention. So many thanks for coming back and doing this webinar. And I hope lots of people are going to watch it on as a recording, because I think it's really important and useful information for us all at the SRTA, so we can write about regression and get it out there into the wider audience.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to see you guys. And yeah, it's been a while since I connected with the association. So hopefully in 2026, there'll be more interesting topics that we can do in your Connect and Share, Lucy, that you're kindly organizing.
Yes. Topics are, welcome for inspiration for topics from anybody.
Great. And good
Yeah.
luck with finishing your certification, Dennis.
Mm.
And with writing. I mean, it's really unique to be a psychologist who writes about this kind of stuff. There aren't that many. And you have more authority, so-called authority, to the general population than somebody who doesn't come from your background. So I think you'll be doing a great service if you do write.
Mm.
Well, thank you for this too. This has been great, and getting an overview and a lot of little bits and pieces that I hadn't thought of. So that this will turn out to be pretty useful. So I appreciate it.
Brilliant. Well, happy holidays, everybody. Happy New Year and happy Christmas, happy New Year, happy Hanukkah, everything that's coming.
Same to you, Daniela. Yeah, good to see you again.